Just sign the papers and give him everything, my mother hissed from the gallery, her voice carrying in the hushed courtroom with the confidence of someone who had never doubted her own judgment. You never deserved him anyway. Stop embarrassing this family with your pathetic attempts to keep what isn't yours. My father nodded approvingly beside her, and my soon-to-be ex-husband Derek smiled smugly from the opposite table, already mentally spending assets he assumed would soon be his. But why did I remain silent through their accusations, and why did Judge Patricia Holloway freeze mid-review of my financial disclosure documents, her expression shifting from routine to something approaching alarm? Counsel, I need to stop these proceedings. Derek's lawyer looked confused. Your Honor? Ms. Nakamura, according to these documents, you hold the primary patent for what's listed as Advanced Quantum Encryption Protocol version 7.3. The judge removed her glasses. This is the military's new communications encryption system? Yes, Your Honor. These assets require federal security clearance before any division in a divorce proceeding. I'm legally required to contact the Department of Defense before we proceed. She turned to her clerk. Get me the Pentagon's Office of General Counsel. Immediately. The smug smile vanished from Derek's face. My mother's confident expression crumbled into confusion. And I finally allowed myself a small smile, the first in 18 months of hell. I'd married Derek Morrison when I was 26 years old. He was charming, ambitious, and came from a family my parents adored, old money, social connections, the kind of pedigree they'd always wanted for their daughter. That I was a computer scientist working on incomprehensible projects at a defense contractor meant nothing to them. That I graduated top of my class from MIT meant less than Derek's family name and country club membership. Finally, you've done something right, my mother had said at the engagement party. Derek can take care of you now. You can stop pretending that computer nonsense is a real career. I'd stopped arguing with my parents about my work years earlier. They'd never understood what I did, never cared to understand, and had spent my entire life treating my accomplishments as obstacles to the real goal, marrying well. Derek had seemed different. He'd praised my intelligence, encouraged my work, seemed genuinely proud to be with someone whose mind worked in ways his couldn't comprehend. It was all performance. The marriage lasted 8 years before the truth emerged. Derek had married me for my earning potential. His family money was largely inherited and largely depleted, maintaining the lifestyle required constant infusion of new funds. My salary at Meridian Defense Systems, combined with the patent royalties from my encryption work, had been financing his existence for nearly a decade. When I discovered the affair, with his personal trainer, naturally, he'd been almost relieved. Finally, we can stop pretending, he'd said. I want a divorce. And I want half of everything. Half of everything included intellectual property worth approximately $47 million. The encryption system I'd developed had become the backbone of military communications security. Every branch of the armed forces used my protocols. Every classified transmission relied on my algorithms. The patent royalties alone generated $3.2 million annually. Derek wanted half. My parents thought he deserved it. The family dynamics around the divorce had been devastating. I'd expected my parents to support me, foolishly, perhaps, given 34 years of evidence to the contrary. Instead, they'd sided with Derek immediately. He put up with you for 8 years, my mother said. Your moods, your obsession with work, your refusal to give him children. He deserves compensation. He was cheating on me. Men have needs. If you'd been a better wife. I was funding his entire lifestyle. My work paid for everything he has. Your work. My father's contempt was palpable. Nobody understands what you do, Elaine. Nobody cares. Derek's family has social standing. What do you have? Numbers on a computer screen? Those numbers protect military communications for the entire country. Don't be dramatic. You're not that important. They'd attended every court hearing, sitting in the gallery with Derek's family, presenting a united front against their own daughter. The message was clear: I was the family failure, the disappointing child who somehow trapped a good man and was now trying to take more than I deserved. The financial disclosure was about to correct their assumptions permanently. The Pentagon's response came within 90 minutes. Judge Holloway had recessed while waiting for guidance from the Department of Defense. Derek's legal team had huddled nervously, clearly unprepared for the revelation that their client's wife was considerably more valuable than they'd assumed. My parents sat in stunned silence, still processing what they'd heard. The primary patent for the military's encryption system, my mother had whispered to my father. What does that mean? It means she wasn't exaggerating. It means she actually is that important. A representative from the DoD Office of General Counsel appeared via video conference when proceedings resumed. Your Honor, the intellectual property in question is classified as critical national security infrastructure. Any division or transfer of ownership requires review by the Defense Contract Management Agency and approval from the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment. Can you explain what this means for the divorce proceedings? The patent cannot be divided, transferred, or encumbered without federal approval. Any settlement involving these assets must be reviewed for national security implications. The representative paused. Additionally, the petitioner, Mr. Morrison, would need to undergo security clearance evaluation before being granted access to any information about the patent's value or licensing arrangements. Derek's lawyer spoke up. Your Honor, my client is simply seeking equitable division of marital assets. Counselor, these aren't ordinary marital assets. These are national security assets that happen to be held by someone who got married. The federal government has a significant interest in ensuring they remain properly secured. The hearing extended into a second day while federal lawyers consulted. During the recess, I'd finally confronted my parents. 34 years, I said. 34 years of you telling me my work didn't matter. That I was wasting my potential. That nobody cared about numbers on a computer screen. My mother's expression was unreadable. We didn't know. You didn't ask. You never asked what I actually did. You just decided it was worthless because you couldn't understand it. But the Pentagon. The Pentagon relies on my work to protect classified communications. Every military operation, every intelligence transmission, every secure channel between the president and military commanders uses encryption I developed. I let that sink in. You thought Derek deserved compensation for putting up with me. He was living off my royalty checks while sleeping with his personal trainer. My father tried to intervene. Elaine, we were just trying to help you move on. You were siding with the man who betrayed me because his family has social standing. You valued his name over your own daughter's accomplishments. I turned away. I don't need your help. I never did. The federal review took 3 weeks. During that time, Derek's legal strategy collapsed entirely. His lawyers had assumed they were negotiating a standard asset division, house, cars, retirement accounts. They had anticipated that their client's wife was a critical national security asset holder whose intellectual property couldn't be touched without Pentagon approval. The Department of Defense's position was clear: the patent would not be divided. Its strategic importance to military communications meant it had to remain under single ownership, and that owner had to maintain appropriate security clearance. Derek did not have security clearance. He couldn't even be told the specific value of the patent without undergoing background investigation. This is outrageous, his lawyer argued. My client has a right to equitable distribution. Your client has a right to equitable distribution of divisible marital assets, the federal representative countered. This patent is not divisible under national security law. Your client may be entitled to other compensation, but he cannot receive any interest in the intellectual property itself. The negotiation shifted dramatically. Instead of Derek claiming half of everything, we were now discussing whether he deserved any compensation at all beyond standard asset division. The house, purchased with my earnings, was mine. The investment accounts, funded by my royalties, were mine. The retirement savings, accumulated through my employment, were mine. Derek's contribution to the marriage? His family name and his personal trainer's phone number. The final settlement was decided 5 weeks after the initial hearing. Derek received $150,000, approximately what he'd contributed to our household expenses over 8 years, a generous estimate that my lawyer had recommended to avoid prolonged litigation. He received no interest in the patent, no claim to future royalties, no share of the intellectual property that had been funding his lifestyle. The judgment included a non-disclosure agreement preventing him from discussing any details of my work or the settlement terms. Violation would trigger federal penalties. My parents had stopped attending hearings after the Pentagon's involvement became public. The social embarrassment of having sided against their nationally significant daughter was apparently too much to bear. Derek signed the papers with barely concealed fury. You destroyed my life, he hissed across the courtroom. You destroyed our marriage. I'm just protecting what I built. I gave you 8 years. You gave me 8 years of performance while spending my money and sleeping with other women. You got exactly what you deserved, nothing. The aftermath with my parents was complicated. They'd reached out after the settlement, attempting reconciliation. My mother's call came first. Elaine, we need to talk. We didn't understand. You didn't try to understand. You decided I was worthless because my success didn't look like what you expected. When my marriage failed, you blamed me without knowing any facts. You sat in that courtroom supporting the man who'd betrayed me. We thought we were helping. You were helping yourselves feel better about having a daughter who didn't fit your image. The patents, the Pentagon involvement, the national security implications, none of that was new. I've been doing this work for 15 years. You just never cared to learn about it. We're proud of you now. You're impressed by external validation. The Pentagon made my work real to you because you respect authority. But my work was real before they called the courtroom. It was real when you were telling me to stop pretending it was a career. My father's approach was different. He appeared at my apartment 3 weeks after the settlement, looking older than I remembered. I owe you an apology. A real one. I'm listening. Your mother and I, we built our values around things we could see. Social status, family names, visible achievement. Your work was invisible to us. We couldn't display it at dinner parties or discuss it at the country club. He sat heavily on my couch. We measured your worth by standards that couldn't capture what you actually are. What changed? The Pentagon. Watching federal officials treat you as critical infrastructure. Seeing Derek's lawyers panic when they realized what they were dealing with. He shook his head. We should have seen it ourselves. We should have asked, should have listened, should have trusted that our daughter knew her own value. Why didn't you? Because it was easier to believe Derek's narrative. That you were difficult, that your work was incomprehensible nonsense, that he was the long-suffering husband of an impossible wife. Believing him meant we didn't have to confront our own failures in understanding you. The reconciliation was gradual and imperfect. My parents made efforts, genuine efforts, to understand my work. My father read articles about encryption, asked questions about national security applications, tried to comprehend why the Pentagon cared about algorithms. My mother struggled more, but she stopped dismissing my career as computer nonsense. The damage couldn't be fully repaired. Years of dismissal had created distance that wouldn't disappear because of a dramatic court hearing. But we were building something new, something based on their growing recognition of who I actually was rather than who they imagined me to be. I still don't understand most of what you do, my father admitted during one dinner. That's okay. You don't have to understand it. You just have to accept that it matters. I do now. I wish I'd accepted it sooner. So do I. Derek's post-divorce trajectory was predictable. Without my income funding his lifestyle, he was forced to actually work, a novel experience that apparently didn't suit him. The personal trainer relationship ended when she discovered his reduced circumstances. Last I heard, he was selling real estate and dating women whose financial backgrounds he investigated thoroughly before committing. His family's social standing couldn't pay his bills. The country club membership was the first casualty. I felt nothing about his decline. No satisfaction, no vindication, no sympathie. He'd simply become irrelevant, a mistake I'd made in my 20s that no longer had any claim on my attention. The encryption patent continues generating royalties. The military's communications security depends on protocols I developed in my cramped MIT graduate office, refined through years of defense contractor work, and protected through federal channels my parents couldn't have imagined. Every classified transmission is my legacy. Every secure military operation owes something to the numbers on a computer screen my mother had dismissed. I've expanded my work, new patents, new applications, consulting contracts with agencies I can't name. The income is substantial, but that was never the point. The point was solving problems that mattered, protecting communications that saved lives, building something that would outlast any marriage or family disappointment. My daughter was born last year, through IVF, on my own terms, without any man's permission or involvement. She'll grow up knowing her mother's work matters, knowing that invisible achievements can be more valuable than any social standing. What does mommy do? She'll eventually ask. Mommy protects people's secrets, I'll tell her. Important secrets that keep everyone safe. She won't understand, not at first. But unlike my parents, I'll make sure she knows that not understanding something doesn't mean it's worthless. The courtroom moment stays with me. Judge Holloway's expression when she realized what I held. Derek's smile disappearing. My parents' confusion as their assumptions crumbled. The Pentagon representative explaining that their disappointing daughter was actually critical national security infrastructure. You never deserved him anyway, my mother had hissed. She was right, but not in the way she meant. I never deserved a man who saw me as a funding source. I never deserved a family who measured my worth by social standards I couldn't meet. I never deserved to spend 8 years financing someone else's life while being told I should be grateful for his presence. I deserved what I had always been, valuable. Not because the Pentagon said so, not because a judge recognized my patents, but because the work itself mattered. My parents needed federal involvement to see that value. Derek needed lawyers explaining national security implications. The courtroom needed documentation and official calls and bureaucratic validation. I'd known all along. They dragged me to divorce court expecting tears and surrender. They expected me to give Derek everything because I never deserved him anyway. They expected the family failure to finally be exposed and properly humiliated. Instead, the Pentagon got involved. Instead, federal lawyers explained that I was critical national security infrastructure. Instead, the daughter they dismissed for 34 years turned out to be exactly as important as she always claimed. Derek got $150,000 and a non-disclosure agreement. My parents got a lesson in the cost of assumptions. And I got freedom, from a cheating husband, from family expectations, from anyone who measured my worth by standards I never agreed to. The encryption still works. The military still uses it. And somewhere, my parents are finally learning to ask what their daughter actually does before deciding it doesn't matter.